Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. Dominic falls into Mariah's trap. Billy reacts to horrible news. Dominic Winters will fall into Mariah Copeland's trap while Billy Abbott reacts to horrible news. After Sally Spectre tries to shoot out an SOS to Jill Abbott, she'll learn that Jill's heart troubles are glaring up. Snapper Foster will make it clear that Jill's not over to dealing with added stress right now. From there, Sally will give Billy updates on her attempt to reach Jill and what she learned from Snapper rather. Since Jill's situation could be dire, Sally may push Billy to patch effects up with his mama and make sure he doesn't have any regrets. Of course, Sally may point out that this Chancellor drama could blow up Billy's relationship with Jill each over again. Jill will inescapably hear the news sooner or laterly, so Sally may wonder if Billy really wants to make life more delicate for his mama right now. Billy will have a chance to reply to this intimidating word about Jill's health, so we'll see if that influences his deal with Kane Ashby. Speaking of Kane, he'll get a fierce warning from Victor Newman. Victor will let both Kane and Phyllis Summers know that they'd more surrender now or they wouldn't like what happens coming. Victor is cooking up a plan to make Kane believe Lily Winters, Maddie Ashby, and Charlie Ashby are in Detriment's way, but it'll just be a ruse on his part. Over with Mariah, YNR spoilers say she'll let her shady side take over as she sets a Dominic trap. It wouldn't be long until Dominic falls right into it, so Mariah should have no trouble getting him on board for some fun. Naturally, it wouldn't be delightful at all for Devon Winters and Abby Winters when they latterly realize Dominic has dissolved. Mariah Copeland in captivity after her Dominic Winters scheme is exposed. This fierce Mama's fury will be unleashed, so let's talk about all the drama ahead. During the week of January 26, 30, Abby and Devon Winters will get the shock of their lives when they realize Dominic has dissolved. Devon and Abby will originally hope that Dominic might have just wandered off to play on the Chancellor grounds nearly. Unfortunately, an expansive hunt of the property would end effect in a Dominic reunion. The staff will be questioned, but they wouldn't have seen any sign of Dominic before his evaporating act. Mariah will supposedly be suitable to whisk Dominic down without anyone realizing what she's up to. In fact, it may take some time before Abby and Devon discover that Mariah had anything to do with Dominic's exposure. There's no reason for Mariah to be on Devon and Abby's radar as a suspect just yet. Still, there'll ultimately come a point when the mystification pieces will ever click into place. Devon and Abby will eventually realize Mariah is the kidnapper they're looking for, so that'll catch them off guard. Since we know this YNR plot will lead to some strife in Abby and Devon's marriage, they may differ about Mariah's fate down the road. Devon may suppose it's egregious that Mariah needs internal help since this isn't like her at all. Abby may be less sympathetic to Mariah's issues and argue that she wants her former friend to pay for stealing her son. From Abby's perspective, Mariah may need the book thrown at her in court. Mariah's treatment at the clinic in Boston didn't work, so Abby may not be interested in letting her off easy with a psych ward outgrowth. Abby might suppose Mariah belongs behind bars and fight to make sure Mariah lands there after her ineluctable arrest. Mariah and Abby were preliminarily close musketeers, but this whole Dominic fire should ail that fellowship and leave Abby ready to unleash her wrath. Dominic Winters no way sees it coming, because Mariah Copeland doesn't present her trap as anything minatory at all. She wraps it in horselaugh, in familiarity, in that old, trusted warmth that formerly made Abby and Devon believe Dominic was safest when Mariah was near, and that's what makes everything that follows so horrifying. Because while Sally Spectre is across city trying desperately to shoot out an SOS to Jill Abbott, only to learn from Snapper Foster that Jill's heart troubles are glaring up again and that any added stress could push her fragile condition into truly dangerous home, Mariah is still letting her darker instincts take control, persuading herself she's doing what's stylish, that no bone understands Dominic like she does, that no bone loves him the way she does, and when Sally relays Snapper's grave warning to Billy Abbott, her voice pulsing as she explains that Jill isn't strong enough to handle emotional bouleversement right now and that time may not be on Billy's side, Billy is forced to defy the intimidating possibility that his war with Kane Ashby and this Chancellor power play could bring him commodity far more endless than a company, because Sally doesn't sugarcoat it when she urges Billy to suppose about what he'll remorse if Jill takes a turn for the worse, reminding him that this feud has formerly driven a wedge between mama and son before and that Jill will inescapably hear about the rearmost mess sooner or laterly, whether Billy wants her to or not, leaving Billy shaken, disaccorded, and visibly rattled as he processes the horrible news about his mama's health and prodigies if Kane's deal is worth risking Jill's life, especially as Victor Newman contemporaneously turns up the heat away, delivering a fierce, unmistakable warning to Kane and Phyllis Summers that they'd more surrender now or face consequences they wouldn't survive, with Victor intimately orchestrating a nipping ruse designed to make Kane believe Lily Winters, Maddie Ashby, and Charlie Ashby are in grave peril, no way intending to actually hurt them, but further than willing to let Kane suppose the worst if it means recovering control. While back at Chancellor, Mariah's plan unfolds with unsettling ease. Because Dominic trusts her implicitly, and when she suggests an adventure, a secret game, commodity just for the two of them, he goes on without vacillation, laughing, ignorant that this moment will explode into one of the most ruinous heads Devon and Abby have ever faced. And when Abby and Devon latterly realize Dominic is nowhere to be set up, the original fear is tempered by denial as they cleave to the stopgap that he's simply wandered off on the sprawling Chancellor grounds, playing hide and seek the way kiddies do. But as twinkles stretch into hours and in total hunt turns up nothing, dread sets in, the staff is questioned, voices shake, eyes outrage, and no bone has seen Dominic leave or noticed anything suspicious, because Mariah slipped down unnoticed, careful, regular, and heartbreakingly calm, leaving Abby twisting into terror and Devon floundering to stay rational indeed as the walls near in, and for far too long Mariah isn't indeed on their radar as a suspect, because why would she be? Why would anyone suspect the woman they formerly trusted like family? The woman Abby formerly called her closest friend, but sluggishly, sorrowfully, the mystification pieces begin to shift into place, inconsistencies crop, recollections resurface, and the verity hits them like a gut punch when they eventually realize Mariah is the kidnapper they're searching for, a disclosure that leaves Devon stupefied and Abby absolutely incandescent with fury, because this treason cuts deeper than anything moreover of them imagined possible, and as authorities near in and Mariah's scheme unravels, the fate becomes just as explosive as the crime itself, with Abby and Devon colliding plaintively over what should be next, Devon averring that this isn't who Mariah really is, that commodity is deeply wrong, that she needs serious internal help and compassion rather of combination, while Abby hears none of it, her motherly instincts roaring as she makes it clear that from her perspective Mariah does earn sympathy, that the clinic in Boston formerly failed her, that defenses wouldn't bring Dominic back or abolish the terror of those missing hours, and that Mariah belongs behind bars where she can no way hurt their son again, no matter how close they formerly were, no matter how important history they participated, and when Mariah eventually lands in captivity after her Dominic Winters scheme is completely exposed, Abby's fury is unleashed with a ferocity that shocks indeed those closest to her, motioning the complete destruction of a formerly unbreakable fellowship and the morning of a long, bitter road toward justice, mending, and consequences that will ripple through Genoa City long after Dominic is safely home, leaving Billy scuffling with the weight of Jill's fragile health, Victor stropping his shanks for Kane, and everyone involved wondering how so numerous lives could be shattered by secrets, preoccupation, and one terrible moment when trust was weaponized against the people who believed in it most. As Dominic's absence stretches into an agonizing void, Abby and Devon's fear metastasizes into frantic collaboration, with every moment spent digging the Chancellor estate and calling every friend, neighbor, and staff member feeling like a cutter ringing in their hearts, and yet Mariah, confident in her control over the situation, plays the part of the concerned friend impeccably, casting defenses and weaving lies that guard her from dubitation while contemporaneously manipulating Dominic with subtle solace that what they're doing is just a little adventure, that no bone differently can conceivably understand, that they're in on commodity special, a narrative so satisfying that Dominic's innocence blinds him to the peril he's in, all while Billy is still reeling from Sally's grave update about Jill, torn between commercial ambition and filial duty, gaping at the walls of his office, unfit to concentrate on the deal with Kane because his mind keeps circling Jill's vulnerability, wondering if he's formerly awaited too long, if every day spent negotiating power games while Jill's heart falters is one day too numerous, and when news reaches him of Dominic's exposure, the weight of responsibility presses down like a tidal surge, forcing him to defy the duality of heads, his mama's health, a mama who has endured further than utmost in Genoa City, juxtaposed with a youthful life suddenly thrown into pitfall by deception, manipulation, and a treason of trust so particular it strikes at the core of everything he believes in, while Victor Newman, ever the bloodsucker circling his prey, tightens his grip on Kane and Phyllis, watching their every move, allowing them just enough rope to suppose they're maneuvering freely before hanging consequences that could ruin them, and with each passing hour, the pressure between all parties reaches fever pitch, because Genoa City thrives on moments where particular and professional catastrophes collide, and the emotional stakes are as high as the implicit fallout, leaving Devon and Abby interspersing between stopgap and despair as every possible script for Dominic's safety plays out in their minds, and as they grapple with the horrifying notion that their former friend, someone they formerly trusted implicitly, could be able of similar manipulation, their marriage strain becomes palpable, with Devon championing for caution, for empathy, for understanding that Mariah's internal insecurity may be driving these dangerous impulses, arguing that forcing corrective consequences without addressing the root problem could beget further detriment than good, while Abby, her motherly instincts raw and implacable, sees nothing but the crime, the audacity, and the treason, averring that Mariah must face justice in the most concrete terms possible, that charity is a luxury Dominic's well-being cannot go, and that any vacillation on their part could buoy Mariah, allow her to explain her conduct, and put Dominic at threat again, and all the while, Mariah is still orchestrating the coming stage of her plan, icing that every step keeps her one move ahead of those trying to track her, using Dominic's innocence and trust to maintain control, exploiting his desire to please, his need for protestation, and the simple verity that children naturally follow grown-ups they love and respect, which in this crooked script becomes her armament, as she spins a web of false concern, small prices, and emotional confirmation that ensnares him fully, keeping him biddable and ignorant of the peril, and when a unforeseen, minor complication arises, a noise outdoors, a staff member approaching, a call from Devon that Dominic pretends not to hear, Mariah's quick thinking averts discovery, buttressing her skill at manipulation, leaving Abby and Devon growing more hopeless, their anxiety compounding, their studies contending as they weigh every option, from reaching authorities to marshalling every friend and family member, while scuffling with the ineluctable reality that someone they formerly trusted has weaponized their fellowship in a way that could have continuing, unrecoverable consequences, and back at Chancellor, Billy is forced into a torturous decision-making process, balancing the urgency of Jill's worsening heart condition against the commercial maneuverings of Kane Ashby, whose conglomerate hanging schemes are suddenly overshadowed by Dominic's exposure, and as he grapples with guilt, fear, and the imperative to act, he receives a nipping call from Victor, who delights in reminding him that power is transitory, that alliances can deteriorate in a moment, and that only those who act decisively will survive the coming storm, leaving Billy emotionally torn between fighting for control, doing right by Jill, and icing Dominic's safety, and in the midst of this chaos, every commerce becomes loaded with dubitation, every discussion fraught with subtext, every decision an implicit detector for disaster, as Devon and Abby's marriage strain reaches new heights, with heated arguments about strategy, blame, and the implicit issues of legal action versus internal health intervention, and while Abby sees justice as a concrete, exacting path, Mariel must face jail time. Devon contends that understanding Mariah's unstable psyche is essential, that only by addressing her issues can Dominic's safety truly be guaranteed, and the clash of testaments strains not only their marriage but also their capability to coordinate effectively, creating dangerous disunion at a time when consanguinity is consummate, and as the hunt intensifies, every corner of Genoa City is trolled, from the Chancellor estate to the original premises, every phone call, every alert, every lead strictly followed, while Mariah continues to maintain her vision of normality with Dominic, masking the peril with jokes, games, and small comforts, drawing him further into her control, and each fleeting hour increases the pressure exponentially, because the timepiece is merciless, the stakes are advanced than anyone could have prognosticated, and the emotional risk on every person connected, Billy, Jill, Devon, Abby, and indeed Kane and Phyllis as they navigate Victor's pitfalls is crushing, forcing them into moments of soul-searching, fear, and raw emotional exposure that only Genoa City can produce, and as law enforcement becomes involved, interviews conducted, and reservations narrow in on Mariah, the full weight of treason comes into focus, forcing Abby to defy the ruinous verity that her former friend, formerly considered a family in spirit, is now the veritably personification of peril, of manipulation, of a trouble to the life of her most precious child. And as the final vestments of Mariah's plan begin to unravel, with authorities closing in and every taradiddle exposed, the megacity braces for a showdown that promises to be both explosive and cathartic, with Dominic's fate hanging in the balance, Billy's heart tortured by his incapability to act sooner, Jill's heart condition serving as a ticking timepiece amplifying the urgency, and Abby and Devon facing the ultimate test of trust, strategy, and maternal fiber, with Genoa City itself holding its breath as the drama escalates to a top, forcing each character to defy their deepest fears, their rawest feelings, and the stark reality that indeed in a megacity erected on secrets and treason, the cost of manipulation, preoccupation, and unbounded ambition is measured not in plutocrat or power, but in the fragility of life, the intensity of love, and the permanence of choices made under pressure. And when the ineluctable battle eventually occurs, authorities storming Mariah's den, Devon and Abby bursting in with despair written across their faces, Billy arriving moments laterally torn between relief and fury, Jill's condition covered nearly, and Victor watching from a distance with a minatory satisfaction at having orchestrated the perfect storm, the layers of deception, emotion, and consequence collide with disastrous force, revealing the full compass of Mariah's audacity, Dominic's innocence, and the ripple goods that will hang Genoa City for months to come, leaving connections ever altered, trust shattered, and the delicate balance between love, justice, and revenge teetering on a cutter's edge, because in Genoa City, drama is currency, treason is ineluctable, and the fallout of a single ruinous act can review every life it touches, icing that no bone, be it Devon, Abby, Billy, Jill, Kane, Phyllis, or Victor, will ever see the world the same way again. And as Dominic is eventually saved, clinging Abby in relief and fear, as Devon steadies him with pulsing hands, and as Mariah is led down in bond, screaming in wrathfulness and denial, the megacity inclusively exhales, knowing that this chapter is over but understanding that the scars, the pressure, and the assignments learned will echo through every corner of their integrated lives, shaping every decision, every alliance, and every battle in the weeks. Sally set up him there laterally, standing still beside him, not trying to fix anything, not offering tropes, just present, and that presence meant further than Billy could articulate, because for formerly, someone was asking him to be stronger or better or less complicated, they were simply allowing him to be mortal, and in that stillness, Billy realized that grief had stripped him down to commodity raw and real, exposing the corridor of himself he'd spent times hiding behind bravado and chaos. It spooked him, how much he demanded her in that moment, but it also predicated him, reminding him that connection, not subjection, was what Jill had always wanted for him, indeed if she had always known how to say it gently. As weeks turned into months, Jill's absence continued to ripple outward, affecting everyone she'd touched, and Genoa City set up itself reckoning with the vacuum she left before. Power struggles boosted. Old alliances fractured. New bones formed in the murk. Kane Ashby watched Billy nearly, recalibrating his strategies now that Jill was no longer the wild card he'd to regard for, and Phyllis Summers, ever the opportunist, oscillated between sympathy and computation, wondering whether Billy's grief made him vulnerable enough to manipulate or dangerous enough to avoid. But Billy surprised them all by refusing to play the game on their terms, stepping back from schemes that formerly would have excited him, choosing rather to rebuild Abbott dispatches with translucency and intention, indeed when it meant slower progress and smaller dramatic palms. The true test came when an extremity erupted, a fiscal mega-hit that hovered to destabilize everything Billy had worked to stabilize, and for a moment, fear surged, the familiar adrenaline brooding that this was the moment to go, to threat it all, to prove he was still ruthless enough to survive in Genoa City. Billy stood alone in his office that night, gaping at the megacity lights, Jill's voice echoing again, sharper this time being stalwart doesn't mean being reckless. And so he made a choice that stunned everyone he asked for help. He brought Jack in. He consulted counsels he'd have formerly dismissed. He admitted query rather of masking it with bravado, and though the decision bruised his pride, it saved the company, and in the fate, As Billy watched the extremity pass without the collateral damage he'd formerly accepted as ineluctable, he felt commodity dangerously close to pride, not the poisonous kind, but the quiet satisfaction of growth. Yet indeed as Billy moved forward, Jill's heritage continued to hang him in unanticipated ways, because grief doesn't vanish simply because progress is made. There were nights he still reached for his phone. Days he still caught himself preparing to argue with her over opinions she'd no way get the chance to notice. Moments when Horselaugh turned suddenly into anguish because commodity reminded him of her sharp wit or stubborn adaptability. But rather of fighting those moments, Billy learned to let them pass, understanding at last that loving someone meant carrying their absence as well as their presence, and that assignment, painful as it was, reshaped him more profoundly than any commercial poem ever had. In the end, Jill Abbott's final gift to her son wasn't freedom from pain, but the courage to face it without running, to make a life defined not by response or rebellion, but by intention. And as Genoa City continued to churn with reproach, treason, and ambition, Billy Abbott stood at the center of it all, not as the reckless wild card everyone anticipated him to be, but as a man forged by loss, predicated by love, and eventually, ready to step out of his mama's shadow, not because it no longer impended over him, but because he'd learned how to stand altitudinous within it, carrying Jill with him into whatever battles lay ahead.